I'm gonna throw you out the window now.
My legs are tangling on the edge. The stomach full of pills didn't work again. I put a bullet in my head and I'm gone.
Recently, we took a look at The Amazing Spider-Man, and I asked, was it overhated? In the video, I talked about the things that most fans didn't enjoy, but I also discussed things that I personally liked. And to this day, still pretty divisive amongst fans. Although its sequel has gotten much more flack, and it's more disliked even by many of those who enjoyed the first one. Now, I don't hate this movie, I actually find it more frustrating and disappointing than anything. Like, there are several things that I think it does well, and stuff that I enjoy, but unlike the first one, its shortcomings are much more noticeable and irritate me much more. But just like the first one, there was much interference from Sony, several reshoots, deleted scenes, and even editing choices that all result in a very mixed experience for me. Online, you can find roughly 30 minutes of deleted and alternate scenes, and I plan to talk about that more towards the end. But for now, let's look at the movie as is and talk about it, starting with the things that I liked. It may be surprising, but there's quite a bit that I enjoyed. First off, this is one of my favorite Spider-Man suits. It had an upgrade in between movies, and I gotta say, I love it. Unlike the first movie, where there were shots where I thought it didn't look so great, the suit here looks consistently good throughout. Andrew Garfield is just as good as he was in the first, and there are several emotional scenes that let Garfield show off his acting abilities.
Gonna cry? Gonna piss your pants maybe? Literally maybe shit and cum.
With one of the best ones not even making it into the movie, sadly. And again, we get to see Peter use his smarts to try to figure out solutions to problems. The main one being trying to figure out how to make his web shooters withstand electricity so they won't get destroyed when fighting Electro. So Andrew Garfield is great like before. And when he's in the suit, I still think he's one of the best Spider-Men. He really nails that cocky and funny attitude.
Hey, my name is Spider-Man. You can call me Webhead, you can call me Amazing. Just don't call me late for dinner, get it?
And I will be like a god to them.
A god named Sparkles?
You want me to come down there so you can kill me?
Yes!
I'll be right there.
There's no place like home.
Visually, this movie looks great. The web slinging is top notch, and the scenes with Electro have some of my favorite visuals. The action scenes choreography is also great, and they're a blast to watch. So overall, the whole movie looks good, and has some really impressive visuals and action scenes. There aren't as many nighttime shots as the first, but it makes up for it with more brighter and colorful visuals. The relationship and chemistry between Peter and Gwen is great, because Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone were fucking IRL at this point, so on screen they feel like they're a couple, because they were. Also, the soundtrack is good. I love the score that plays when Electro is on screen. That was an eargasm every time it played.
I love it.
I appreciate the world building by showing you characters in the Spider-Man world. Felicia Hardy, Alistair Smythe, Rhino. It's cool seeing these characters and knowing they exist in the world. And at that time, back in 2014, it made you wonder what role they would play later on, if any. It's kinda like how we saw Kirk Connors back in Spider-Man 2 and 3. We knew that he was also the Lizard, and even though he never became the Lizard, it was still cool seeing him. I think it makes the world feel bigger by just seeing these characters and knowing they exist. And those were the things I enjoyed in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, and at times it is a very fun and entertaining movie. But there are things that really hold it back and end up damaging the movie severely, so let's get into that now.
Girls look at me like that guy must make pornos!
The absolute biggest issue with this movie is that it tries to do a lot in a short amount of time. From the jump, people were nervous when it was revealed that there would be 3 villains, because how could they set up and manage all of them? Pretty poorly is the answer. But on top of that, we still have the story of Peter's father from the first movie to finally wrap up, as well as focusing on the relationship between Gwen Stacy and Peter. It has a lot going on, and to me, it doesn't balance it all that well. Let's start with the villains. Rhino's in 2 scenes, the first and the last, so he's basically a non-factor, so his inclusion is basically meaningless. I feel like Crossbones from Civil War had more screen time than him. So the 2 villains we really focus on are Electro and Green Goblin. But this movie has so much going on, it doesn't properly develop or manage them. Electro is considered the main villain, so we'll start with him. We see him briefly as Max before the accident happens that gives him his powers. So he's given a quick origin and he is Electro throughout the rest of the movie. But after the first encounter with Spider-Man, he's pushed into a mental asylum until the climax. In between these moments, the rest of the movie focuses on the secret about Peter's father, Gwen and Peter's relationship, and Harry's disease and looking for a cure. So he's really underutilized. And he doesn't feel as big of a threat as he probably should, because he's just kind of gone for most of the movie. Speaking of Harry, I'm pretty upset with how they handled Green Goblin. I'm not talking about his look. I don't care too much about that. I'm mostly annoyed that we don't see him until the very end, and only for about 10 minutes. I actually thought the progress of Harry losing it was done mostly fine. We see him as Peter's old friend, and then once the disease starts to affect him, he goes mad trying to find a cure. And watching him go from calm and happy to desperate and deranged is entertaining and sometimes hilarious.
You're a fraud, Spider-Man!
So basically the whole movie, Harry's just looking for the cure for the disease he has, but then he quickly gets turned into the Green Goblin for 10 minutes. What they should have done is had this moment happen sooner, so that he's the Green Goblin longer than just one scene. It's funny, it's like Electro and Green Goblin situation are opposite to each other. Electro is given a quick origin and backstory before he's turned into a villain, while Harry is given a longer origin and backstory before he's quickly turned into a villain. And probably the biggest issue I have with the Green Goblin is that he comes in for just one scene at the end, and that was to just kill Gwen Stacy. After that, he fucks off. I was okay with Dane DeHaan's performance, villains. And I was fine with the journey of him becoming more deranged looking for a cure, but this movie has so much going on that it kind of forgets that Harry becomes the Green Goblin, so they quickly transformed him at the end to just have one fight scene. It feels like a waste of one of Spider-Man's most notorious villains. I think Jeremy Jahns put it best.
Green Goblin to me is like the main Spider-Man nemesis. He is the guy, so shoehorning him into the end of the movie just isn't fulfilling to me. It's kind of like imagine The Dark Knight where Two-Face was the main villain, and in the very end, the last 5 to 10 minutes of the movie, they shoehorn the Joker into there. You'd be left with that feeling of, so the main villain of that guy's entire life was just kind of in the last part of the movie? Yeah, that's just not as good.
It was all really just sloppily done. If all the shit with Peter's father was cut out, and instead that time would be used to focus on Electro and Green Goblin, then I think it would have been better. Which leads me to Peter's father. The Amazing Spider-Man 1 had the tagline, "The Untold Story," in the trailer, referring to Peter's father, but it was never wrapped up or concluded in that movie. So now it's here, and just like the first, I don't really care for it. All it does is tell us that Oscorp had evil plans for his father's research, and that he used his own DNA so that they couldn't continue it, which explains why Peter was able to get bitten by one of the spiders and didn't die. I don't really feel like this story added much or was necessary. There's also so much going on that it's kind of forgotten about until the movie wants to bring it up again. Collectively, these scenes take up about 15 to 20 minutes of the movie, and I really feel like they could have spent that time much better than adding more to the story of Peter's father. You could cut this stuff out and it would be mostly the same movie. I feel like they could have used that time to focus on Electro actually doing stuff on screen, or have more scenes of Harry as the Green Goblin. So overall, it doesn't balance this stuff well at all, which makes it frustrating. You have two main villains that aren't properly used, and a third that's basically irrelevant. And you have a subplot about Peter's father that really isn't necessary. For the amount of stuff they wanted to do, they definitely needed a longer runtime. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes, and they had to try to cram in 3 villains, finish the story of Peter's father, Gwen and Peter's relationship struggles, Gwen Stacy's death, Harry's transformation into the Green Goblin, and tease a Sinister Six setup. It's a lot of stuff when you lay it out, and that's why this movie is so frustrating. It tries to do so much in a short amount of time, and many aspects of it feels mishandled, rushed, or half-baked. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this movie had a lot of interference from Sony that Mark Webb had to deal with, leading to the movie that we have now. There are quite a bit of deleted footage and alternate scenes, many of which I think could have made this movie better. I'll leave a link for you to check out the nearly 30 minutes of footage, but I want to highlight the ones that I think are the most important, ones that really could affect the quality of the movie. The biggest one and probably the most important one is Peter meeting his father. Even though I'm not a fan of that subplot in the 2 movies, at least this would have been a surprising and shocking payoff. Max's scene with his mother. It would have just been one extra scene to see Max before he turns to Electro, and kind of help drive home the fact that, yeah, his life kind of sucks, and so we know a little bit more about him. And I prefer the alternate scene where Harry tells Peter that he's dying, not only because I think it's better executed, but we also get to see the military suit, and it explains to us what it does. That way we know why Harry starts crawling towards it when he starts transforming. There is a quick snippet in the final cut of the movie, where his AI voice quickly tells you what the suit is, but it's really easy to miss if you're not paying attention. Also, the Green Goblin scenes would be good to add just so, you know, there's more scenes of Green Goblin. Also, there were several cut scenes of Mary Jane. She made some appearances throughout the movie. I think it would have been nice to see those, as like a precursor to the relationship that was probably going to happen in the third one. Now, those are the main scenes that I thought would have made the movie better. It wouldn't be leap and bounds different, but it would have been at least more enjoyable. Personally, I think what would have made this movie much better if they would have cut out the subplot with Peter's father, and instead used the time to focus on the villains like Electro and Green Goblin, and have Harry figure out about the spider venom sooner, so that he can transform into the Green Goblin earlier in the movie. And have his primary goal be to get back at Spider-Man, for leaving him with no choice but to use the venom, which ended up mutating him. So have him be resentful about that, so he wants to take revenge on Spider-Man. And hell, have him figure out that Spider-Man is actually Peter, and so him and Electro go after Gwen Stacy. That way you can still have her death. In my head, that's how I would have liked the movie to gone. But the final cut of the movie, and the deleted footage that we've seen, is very different from that. And I think even if they were to incorporate the deleted scenes, and include some of the alternate scenes, I think it would make the movie better, but it wouldn't be night and day difference. I'm not a fan of the subplot involving Peter's father, and even from the deleted scenes we've seen, there still isn't much Electro in the movie. And the same thing goes for Green Goblin. The main focus is still Peter and Gwen's relationship, and Peter's father. And of course, I asked you guys, what did you think of the movie? And it's a lot of people feeling the same way I do. They feel frustrated and disappointed. They think the movie tried to do too much and ended up dropping the ball on most of it. Although there are some good things, but the good just doesn't outweigh the bad here. So why don't you go ahead, leave a comment, let me know what you think. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, go and drop a like on it. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.
Just the tip. That's enough. Any more than that's just too much.
You! Give her the phone! You are horny!